My name's Nick, and I'm part of an organisation called Breaking Barriers Innovations, and our focus is around place. And place is a better way to organise things such as public services. And most people, in my experience, agree that place is a better framework than silos in terms of tackling things and making things sustainable. But unfortunately, place doesn't have a budget, organisations do. So a lot of our work in Breaking Barriers Innovations is to identify really interesting examples across the country where place has made a difference and where you can actually demonstrate there's a good return on investment case here. What I want to take you through is a programme which we've been involved in facilitating called More and Different, largely with the NHS, but increasingly with local government and combined authorities. We're working with West Midlands Combined Authority, an example, on civil service jobs and opportunities. And I think the two things which I really want to convey in this session is the importance of, if you're going to do something innovative around engagement in terms of gauging new audiences, it's fantastic, and it's a really important thing to get right, because our engagement needs to move with the times, and particularly if we're going to get to those people from left behind communities, we can't do things in the traditional way. But it needs to be integrated with a much wider package. We need to think about, after we've engaged with someone, what happens next? Are we just going to ask them to do a really complex form to get a job, or are we going to make it easier for them? From the perspective of things like Connect to Work, there's interesting intergenerational focus. So we know we're getting older as a country, and people are living longer, very often in poorer health. But this isn't just about young people. This isn't just about people entering their middle age like myself. This is about a number of different solutions required to different cohorts, and the engagement and the messaging needs to be tailored and fine-tuned to each one, which is why I think the importance of an innovative approach, such as the one CAN provides, is really, really critical. Because actually, if you're not spending time in the space where you want the intervention to happen, you're not going to get the results. So I think there's a big intergenerational aspect of it. Just in terms of where we are in terms of the More and Different programme, it cuts across 14 different integrated care system and local authority locations at the moment. So it's got quite a bit of scale over the last 2 years, and it's aimed at two focuses: new roles which are coming through from the system, which could be applicable to people, and thinking about different candidates applying for the roles. And it comes at a time when there's a lot of things happening all at the same time, and there's always the feeling that we should wait until we get all of the blueprints signed off and all of the visions for this settled. But if we wait till all this to happen, nothing will happen. So I think it's going to happen, things like Connect to Work, at a quite messy time. And I think it's about actually using a very, very dynamic way of understanding the projects and understanding what's happening, what's not working throughout, to actually make this work. And the really exciting thing about More and Different at the moment is actually they're using that learning and actually pioneering new ways to do that across those 6 elements. So in Surrey, they've decided to focus around 50 to 54s and people trapped in in-work poverty, which have been identified by the county as being their 2 top priority areas for intervention. The work which More and Different has been doing has to recruit a number of anchor employers to actually open up their employment and recruitment process to reflect and change that. So we've got some really, really interesting ones way outside of the NHS and local government in industry as well. But the very exciting thing is that we're working with Surrey County Council, and Surrey County Council have brought in CAN Digital to look at these 3 areas. And so JP is about to launch in the next few weeks a number of campaigns reflecting those anchor organisations.
I'm sure many of you know JP as the collaboration director at CAN.
There are some really big barriers to achieving our objectives around giving opportunity to everybody, and particularly focusing that opportunity on to targeting people who may have individual educational needs and so on. So we've simplified this to the barriers being reach, user experience, and the availability of support. And when we talk about reach, it is very common for employment recruitment campaigns to maybe be published, to maybe be allegedly amplified on organic social media, and for then a lot of money potentially to be spent on jobs boards and platforms like LinkedIn. But when you look at where your local population is, particularly lower income households, you can really see that there's a lot of fragmentation around media consumption, and that publish mentality rather than a reach mentality may actually accentuate inequalities. So if you're only publishing your opportunities to people that happen to follow the council on social media, happen to be subscribed to your e-newsletter and things like that, you're probably highly likely to be missing the people you actually want to target. And so knowing where your target audiences are online, how to reach them and how to reach them efficiently is really important. And I think it's one of the largest barriers which we're helping people address. There are often landing pages and experiences which frankly suffer from the TMI, the too much information syndrome. This leads to it being very confusing and very hard for people to work out what the next step should be. And this point, as Nick pointed to, is very important to fix before you turn on your amplification. And so understanding this and improving this, and also weaving into an accessible user experience is the ability for people to say, I'd like some help, or I'd like to have a conversation before. Connecting that human support element, particularly for people with long-term physical or mental health conditions, particularly for people with special educational needs. This is essential and very, very simple to do. And the idea of taking people from an advert to a full application is antiquated. What it's much better to do is to give people a positive, simple experience of your brand, and then enable them to give a very small amount of information, which you can then nurture those people with human interaction, with digital interaction towards opportunities. So these are some of the emerging trends that we're seeing. And these are what we've done in terms of filtering those emerging trends into some basic public sector employment communication principles. So top of that list must be inclusivity. Also, we, being the public sector, we need to make sure we're not wasting money, or to put it another way, always saving money. And we must prove the impact of what we're doing. If we're taking DWP money, DFE money, we need to submit evaluation and data that demonstrates that we got good value for that. And it's really important as well that when you run these campaigns or run amplification, that you have this graph. If you can't see this graph, you're not getting given this graph by your agency or your internal teams, you cannot work out what isn't working, and you cannot optimize. What we're seeing here is blue line interactions, orange line submissions, and that blue line going down over time and then going up, but going up in line with submissions as we optimize the campaign. Something we've just run down in Plymouth, using images of real people who work in care in real places in Plymouth, recognizable, showing large groups of them to socially norm working in care, and promoting a range of career pathways and events for people to come and find out more. We use search advertising around news, not much social actually, to generate 522 submissions in a relatively short period of time, and that included an event where 86 people who turned up at the event had come from this campaign. So turning well-chosen imagery into in-person interactions in a very short space of time. Southwest London ICB have been working on inclusive recruitment, so targeting people on the platforms they're using. So that could be using international news platforms, Google and Bing search, and also the Snapchat platform, to nudge people towards a really accessible mobile landing page, and generating overall 688 responses. But you can see in the 3 phases of that campaign that the cost per response was going down, i.e. the number of impressions and interactions generated to generate response is improving as we optimize. And the client actually had to switch the campaign off multiple times because of the number and quality of people that were coming through.